the Chiratae team for this, wonderful panel. And we are for the next 1 hour in your hands. So hopefully the audience learns a lot from your experience and what is the latest and greatest in healthcare and in AI, right? So Ranjit, let me kick off with a question for you. When you're typically looking at early stage investments in AI, right? What are the kind of signals that you're looking for? Strong tech, real world adoption, team use cases. So what are the typical use cases that you're signals that you're looking at?
Yeah, sure. So I think, see, fundamentally, whether AI or no AI, I think from an early stage perspective, we're looking for two, three things. One is, great founders who are complementary skills, going after a solution that's difficult, but has a huge market opportunity. I think that's very fundamental to any early stage tech investments. With respect to AI and healthcare, I think there are two things that at least we kind of look at, right? One is, how do we build for you mentioned technology moat. Now it's interesting for us, the way we think about technology moat is really the tech team in the founding setup, right? And the reason I say this is simply because the technology is changing so fast. It is not what you're building today, but what is happening around the world in terms of the overall ecosystem and what is working, what is not working, and building an understanding of that and having the ability to attract people who understand this, I think, is really the moat, not no more in the product itself. I really think the moat comes from the tech team that leads this process. And that's one way of looking at this, right? The other one is really in terms of understanding adoption, right? Now, this is what I mean by this is how can you seamlessly integrate into the clinical workflows that are being used over the many years, and how can you build something that seamlessly integrates into it, right? Essentially, how do we build for trust? Because this is very, very key in the overall healthcare ecosystem for you to succeed, that you build trust. When I say trust, it's not necessarily on the consumer side, but more so on the clinician side, because adoption there is significantly important for this to succeed. So how do you build trust with the clinical folks, saying that this can deliver, it will not deviate, and it's fairly consistent, and so on and so forth. So I think those are things that we are looking for, outside of the generic stuff that we always look for in a tech business.
Got it. But interesting that you brought about trust, right? So Nilav, something for you. So typically when you talk about trust, especially if you're looking at in the enterprise space, so
Yep.
healthcare buyers, right, for them to adopt and stick, they obviously you need to build trust. So what are the things that makes them adopt and stick to the platform? So is it accuracy, compliance, or maybe some savings or ROI?
Right.
What exactly I'm looking for? And the second part was how long does it take to build that trust and have like a hospital converting to a paying customer?
Right. I think very pertinent and interesting. So, like we talk to healthcare personas across the entire life cycle, and I think all the three pieces or four pieces. I think you talked about accuracy, compliance, regulatory. I think when you talk to different personas, different things motivate individuals. So, if you're talking to a clinician, I think at the end of it all, the individual really wants an accurate solution. I think you cannot have a clinician move to an AI-enabled solution to tell him or her that 2 out of 10 times probably the AI could be wrong. So if you're talking to a clinician, absolutely, I think accuracy. One of the other things we've seen, which we'd not actually anticipated, was the entire sudden growth in the scribing market. When we thought the general sense is for clinicians to be kind of rooted to what they know as an application. They don't want to move screens. They don't want to take up new tech. But I think scribing was such a the pajama time that we talk of physicians, the amount of time they used to spend in let's say documentation or coding or even billing as such. I think it was a trifecta of saving time. There was clear ROI to it, and it did not also border on all the or had the regulatory kind of agencies frown on. So because it's low risk in that sense. So scribing kind of took off really, really fast for that sense. But yeah, coming back to, I think if you're talking to the clinician, absolutely an accurate solution and something that saves time. If you're talking to the IT setup, I think they are going to come at you for compliance
Mm-hmm.
and regulatory. And yeah, I think if you're talking to the CFO, of course, it has to mean ROI. And when we talk of ROI in healthcare, the other thing we've learned is you can't scare them off saying you are no longer going to employ more providers, physicians, and care nurses. I think what we also have to understand is while there's a lot of wastage. I think we were speaking about $1.9 billion kind of wasted in non-clinical tasks,
Yeah.
so admin tasks, right? Uh, there's a lot of missed care opportunities. So what you have to tell them is with the task force, you're now able to look at 10x the same number of patients with probably AI looking at a lower risk kind of segment of patients in terms of reaching out or administering or suggesting care. So I think short answer kind of depends on which persona you're talking to. I think there's a clinician, there's a IT ops, and then there's the I think there's a regulatory body and all.
So the point that you said, so when you're looking at the 10x kind of opportunity that you can then unlock for them, is that a selling point to hospitals when you talk to them saying, you know what, you are able to now look at a much larger audience or much larger patient base, and consequently your revenues and so on are.
Yes, I think absolutely, because I think it's we've kind of sat with our teams, our planning teams, to sit through these Excel sheets where how much are you investing in a solution. It matters a lot how you exactly price, right? Pricing agents is something we've not like really mastered at this point in time, because it's not just an LM call, it's also I think the amount of build you're putting into building these AI workflows, maintaining them. There's also the concept of it's not just an LM call, but the number of retries you make to make it reliable. So that versus so how much of spend you're going to make to buy an agent versus how many additional patients that you're able to see, that kind of drives home the value. Because in the VBC space, that's where kind of Innovaccer started off heavily. You are also assessed, like hospitals and ACO systems are also assessed by a metric called quality. How well are you able to keep your patients healthier over a period of time, right? So those are areas where AI like deeply helps to improve quality of care, and that's what is kind of a motivator for ACOs and hospitals as well.
Got it. And the last part of my question was, how long does it generally take to convert a hospital to a paying
We've
customer?
typically seen at least a pilot running for 6 to 8 months, I think, before.
Long
Yeah,
sales
6
cycle.
months, 6 to 8 months before turning on, because I think an initial pilot could say 3 providers, then they give a tick mark, and with the CMO kind of taking it back and saying, okay, another 10 providers are going to use it. At this point, they're really careful about any kind of AI they bring into their clinical workflows. But my sense is another key point is one of the key reasons AI wasn't moving that fast earlier was kind of FDA frowning on it. I think between 2012 to 2018 or 19, I think, if you won't believe, I think they passed probably 5 or 10 SAMDs, like softwares as medical devices. 2020 till now, I think it's another 300 to 500 SAMDs. So so it shows they're trusting it. And if FDA is trusting it, hospital systems would, and if hospital systems do, the clinicians would also. So I think that is also having a great cascading effect.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So,
question I have, take 8 months to close a hospital. Do you see churn happening, and do they churn out far? Do they stay longer? I mean, once you're in, is it like?
Oh, yeah. I think once you are in, I think it's for the long run. And while it takes time to get that trust built in, and that's where, if you're talking to clinicians and you're working on clinical AI workflows, accuracy has to be a key point. I think that's one of the things also we're going to discuss on, where it's probably integration plays a bigger part versus accuracy plays a bigger part. You're talking to clinicians, it takes a bit of time to gain their trust, but once you are in it, it's in for the long run. You kind of build a relationship with them, with the product. A lot of stickiness.
got it. So let's change tax a little bit and let's move to the consumer space. So Tushar, question for you. So how do you solve for trust again with consumers, right? Especially given all the misinformation that's out there, so many YouTube videos, you have your grandmothers and grandpas telling you, all kinds of remedies. So how do you solve for trust in this kind of scenario when it, especially for AI products in the consumer space?
Yeah. I think,
Yeah.
look, AI itself is solving a lot of the trust in
Okay.
the world itself. Especially the younger a population is, the more AI friendly they are, the more
Mhm.
exposed they are. So, like in India, the AI adoption has been incredibly well taken on. US obviously is quite evolved, but India has been good. So generally, the younger populations are more AI native, more AI trusting. You also have them bringing on the older populations on board, right? So I don't think, and as models have become better, hallucinations are coming down. Obviously, accuracy is improving, reliance is increasing. So the trust factor, we didn't have to work very hard, to be honest.
Okay.
Now we launched RIA, our AI agent, back in 2018. This is pre-generative AI. By 2019, majority of our messages in India were already being handled by RIA directly, knowingly. So
Nice.
consumers were sending about 55 or 60% of their messages to RIA and about 45% of the messages to real human coaches. Now, obviously, what helps is if you can ground your AI with actual human coaching data. What helps is that if you are having humans in the loop, so any clinician, any provider, any doctor has no resistance to editing AI information and then sending it to consumers, right? So in our coach plans, when people connect with coaches, they are helped by AI at the back end to do their jobs better. And that there is no issue. So I don't think we've had that trust. We did have trust issues on Vision AI. Again, frontier models, new age work. We started our photo-based nutrition tracking back in 2019, 2018 timeframe again. And initially it was, obviously we had very low accuracy. It was like sub 30, 35% accuracy. Edits were very high, so people did not trust it. And that feature we had to kill. We launched it again in 2023. November, this is with generative AI. We were the first out of the door with Vision APIs in the world for nutrition tracking. That too for Indian foods. But it took some while for the accuracies to really start curving up. It was only in, I think, October 2024 when AI's ability to recognize a food as something exceeded a team of humans' ability to recognize the food as that accurately. So AI's accuracy crossed human recognition, and like this year has been amazing. So now you can kind of blindly rely, and new age innovation is possible. Like people weren't so trusting to give us access to their galleries earlier, but now people do, and there's not a problem. So we have a model that figures out whether something is food or not food. If it is food, it tracks it, it sends it to the cloud, and we track it asynchronously. So we became the only app, when the only calorie counting app in the world where you don't have to use our app to track your food. As long as you take photos of food, we'll track it for you at the background, right? So you don't even have to open Healthify to count your nutrition tracking. So it was an innovation, very nifty innovation. We filed a patent on it, but that took a while to build that trust. So everything is kind of leading that way. I wouldn't worry too much about trust by consumers. I think consumers are the easiest. Then we have the providers following up, and finally the regulators getting in line, as we just saw with SAMDs, etc. So, I mean, obviously, the next year is ripe for superb innovation without too much of concerns. In areas that are too sensitive, I would say it's just easier to start consumer first.
Got it. So, do you see that because of the rapid adoption of consumers, that's also pulling in some of the regulators and saying, okay, this is something that, is out there and it is obviously working because you're seeing consumer adoption, and that's kind of leading to a little bit of change in their attitudes?
Absolutely right. Like even being on this panel was interesting to me. It said AI in healthcare. What's the full name?
Mixer.
Yeah.
AI in healthcare mixer.
AI and healthcare mixer, right? AI and healthcare was the panel here today. And it reminded a throwback because I've been doing Healthify for nearly 13 years. But in my very early years at Healthify, I was part of panels where you say IT in healthcare, right? And then in about 5 or 7 years ago, those panels stopped to exist because, I mean, you don't think about IT in healthcare. Like obviously IT is there in healthcare. Like what are you talking about, right? I'm sure 25, 30 years, no, maybe 70, 80 years ago, there were panels in stages which had electricity in healthcare, right? So these things are happening right now,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure this would happen very quickly where AI is going to be obviously the way you do things. And you see that in the younger population countries. And therefore, I think India, especially as a young country, will adopt that much faster
Sure.
than some of the, like Japan, for example, that would struggle to take on that AI
That shift.
nativeness. Yeah.
Interesting. So, Ranjit, a question to you. Given that we have seen the both sides, right, consumer adoption and the enterprise adoption. So, given your lens where you're looking at both these, spaces, both consumer and enterprise, Do you see the longer sales cycles of the past kind of shifting now with more of the technology and more, what should we say, interest in, say, the regulators to kind of move with speed or with some level of purpose? Do you see that reducing?
Yeah, no. So I'll tell you. I mean, from an investor standpoint, I think we are very clear when we invest in the B2B side of healthcare, right?
Mm-hmm.
These sales cycles are going to be long. We need to be patient. I think there is. I think if you're an investor in healthcare, I think you need to build that patience. Otherwise, you will, run out of patience very quickly and put pressure on the company's founders and so on and so forth. Just it's important to understand that it takes longer to build credibility, build trust, and get it deployed in enterprise solutions around healthcare, right? I think there is very, very strong clarity, at least internally, with us at the fund. And it's simply because these processes have evolved over many years, or many trial and error. So it is not easy for somebody to kind of change all of this, especially if there is a regulatory angle, and I'll come to that in a bit. So I think for us, it is very, very clear. And this is why I was saying earlier also, it's important to understand how, when you build a solution, how seamlessly it integrates into the clinical workflow, whether it's hospital or the clinicians, right? Because any change there will put up a resistance to adoption, right? And that is a key driver to this, right? On the enterprise side. On the consumer side, like Tushar was saying, I think it's a little more easier because people are willing to take a lot more risk than an enterprise, and we're seeing this across our portfolio that's focused on healthcare in the consumer space. And there, I think value that you deliver, I think, is a little bit more important, whether it's in terms of pricing and so on and so forth, right? Like Tushar was saying, I mean, there was a time when actionable insights was of value, telling people, okay, and we're seeing this with calorie and counting and so on and so forth, right? But today people are asking, okay, now that I know that, what do I do more with this, right? And especially in consumer, I think, and Tushar will be able to explain this better, is that we're seeing, once you figure out the actionable insights, how do you support adherence, right? Because I mean, people give up very quickly. I mean, it's extremely difficult, right? So I think AI could play a very, very significant role on the adherence side, supporting adherence. Right. And the last bit, I think, another area that at the fund that we're fairly interested in on the consumer side is this whole care coordination piece. See, at the end of the day, the healthcare delivery ecosystem is absolutely very well equipped to treat. Right. So you walk into a hospital, you get treated, but there are a bunch of stuff that you have to do pre-treatment, post-treatment. So hand-holding somebody through that treatment protocol, right? Not just the patient, but the caregiver is also an important element in the overall mix here, because at the end of the day, the patient is going to be lying on the, in the bed and so on and so forth. So, those are areas on the consumer side, I think really AI can play a role, right? So while as a fund, we look at both of these, the expectation and in terms of sales cycles or how fast you can scale is very different on both these angles.
Got it. So let me double click on one of the points that you said, right? The adherence part. And Tushar, this is kind of towards you. So when it comes to adherence, especially for a consumer product where you have probably a lot of noise, so many consumer products, so many things that are always coming up all the time. So how do you make sure your users are coming back, right? So what is it? Accuracy, engagement, or some outcomes that are kind of making sure that there is adherence to the platform and to their plan, or is it the personalized coaching that you guys kind of provide?
I think in any consumer play, your experience matters a lot, right? Your net promoter score, experience while you're on the platform matters a lot. And in our case, the NPS and the outcomes are the two things that matter overwhelmingly so.
Okay.
Stanford published a paper on our data, which was the first paper in the world to compare AI coaching for outcomes and human coaching for outcomes. And humans are obviously better in delivering outcomes, even though the engagement is higher on the AI piece. So it's interesting, because you feel accountable to someone, etc. Now, however, your people coming back is going to be dependent on how their experience was.
Okay.
Right? So there is going to be inevitable drop-offs, no doubt. Yeah. This is not in health app. There's no way people are going to continue sticking on it regularly. That has to be the 1 percentile. But what's important is that people had a great time. So the next time there is a motivation to think about health, your brand recall is high.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm sure people in the room also, you've probably used Healthify in your life before, and you probably use it intermittently, if I'm not wrong. Right. So you probably have picked it up every once in an average of 18 months or so in your journey, in the last few years. And that's pretty typical. I'm seeing a lot of nods, and that's pretty typical, for a classic user. But that's what keeps coming back, is that you have a good time. And did you see results? Another piece that is important is, are you able to keep up with good innovation? We at Healthify like to disrupt ourselves every couple of years, with a product and an innovation and a system that is better than the last one, right? So we just want to make sure that we are disrupting ourselves so somebody else isn't, right? Before somebody else, we're paranoid about that. So we keep innovating. Look, I think people still like to talk to human coaches more. There is no doubt about that. But I think it's to do with having access to quality feedback and coaching at a fraction of the price point. So suddenly, we have, the total paid subscribers is growing a lot, right? Where AI is taking the dominant forward footprint. The other piece, if I may just add, since I'm on this panel, I know you didn't ask, but basis some of the stuff it was again discussed, guys, is that this language capabilities is quite remarkable. So and also data and cultural inputs and sensitivity is quite remarkable. So if you're building, for example, for India, and you're building something that's truly tech and digitally oriented, or for the US, for example, there is really no reason you can't think of building for the whole world.
Yeah.
For like 20 markets at the same time. So to the extent that adds a lot more lift and leverage, something I would highly encourage. Like, we're definitely hurtling down that path, as I see.
Yeah, and also I think, you spoke about regulatory earlier, and I think this is really the change, right? I mean, we're talking about how much of clearances the FDA has done over the last few years compared to the previous. I really think, healthcare traditionally has been, massively regulated, and for the right reasons, right? But I really think it will be forced. The regulators will be forced, right? Because the adoption on the other end will be so high and so quickly that the regulators
have
will
to
have
take
no
action.
other option but to move this forward.
Sam Altman mentioned, right? Like, the number of people, the biggest, one of the biggest use cases of OpenAI is ChatGPT is coming out to be health and mental wellness. And I think, like, I actually sincerely believe that by 2030, if not earlier, maybe by 2027 or 28, everybody in India will have a doctor, period. Right? So there'll be a doctor for everyone. It's just that it'll be an AI doctor that you can engage. That is an inevitability. And once people start to engage with that, the genie's out of the box.
Yeah.
You'll have to figure out a way to enable that rather than take it away. So, yeah.
It's clear with the data, right? I mean, which Yash presented. If you look at the adoption of scribes, right? I mean, it's in 4 years, it has done what is taken 20 years for pen and paper to move to software, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is phenomenal rate of adoption. And we've done this. I mean, I was reading some report which said that in the clinical setup, right, 97% of the folks have used some generalist AI. Okay, and this is in the healthcare setup I'm talking about, right? So they're all comfortable with generalist AI solutions, 97%. About 76% of them have already used something in the clinical setup. So, I mean, there's no escape. It is coming. It is absolutely coming.
Got it.
Yeah. I had a point there. I think absolutely it is coming, but as builders, I think with so much of power comes a lot of responsibility. Is what we're being asked. I mean, there are a lot of providers, MDs who kind of sit in our product and design teams. They say, fine, I mean, let kind of AI generate probably potential diagnoses, suspect diagnosis. But when you're building through it, also try to ensure that in your logs, you're maintaining traceability of where in a patient's medical charts or history was a component or some information picked up, basis which probably some sort of prediction or generation was made. I think that kind of brings a lot of trust back for the providers to then say, ki, yeah, fine, I think something is getting generated, but it has traceability. And also specifically where not necessarily just picking facts from a patient's chart, but suggesting potential diagnoses. A lot of it is there in open journals, PubMed and JAMA journals. JAMA is again not free, but if you're like, open evidence is such a big product in the market where it not only tells you suspected conditions if you give your entire patient history, but it'll tell you which are the journals and which paragraphs was all that content kind of intersected with, and the generation happened. So I think that is starting to like give a lot of trust when kind of building AI.
So on that note, right? So you're basically talking about, almost like a customized model where you're inputting data and you're trying to do this.
Yeah.
But in this era, right, where you have all these ChatGPT 5s and all those things coming out, where do you see the, what should we say, defensibility for this, right? Because the data that you are, say, gathering, right, it's proprietary.
Right.
And that is obviously the one that is going to help you, give the, what should we say, prediction that maybe this is something that you need to consider as a symptom, or do you think it's more going to be about vertical integration with the stack that is already there to kind of make sure you're embedded in the workflows so you're not displaced? Where do you see the defensibility come up for enterprise use cases?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you take even one step further, I mean, if you look at all the models, all the frontier models, enterprise hyperscale LLMs, even they are plateauing. I think all the talk about Andre Kapati or really, I think these are some of the frontier kind of data scientists in this space around scaling laws that we've effectively utilized all the data that's out there. It's coming to the fore. I mean, these folks spoke about it 6 months back. So it's not just kind of businesses, but even these kind of hyperscalers who've built these models, even they are plateauing. Now, what do you do in this segment? How do you kind of start to create your moat, right? So absolutely, I think having focused domain specific data is absolutely kind of the deepest moat you can build. In fact, at Innovaccer, we are actually investing into creating trained or labeled data in the space of probably clinical coding or prior authorization that kind of starts to create differences, and on top of which kind of you build your small language models beyond. And then again, I think we cannot expect, because it's very cap intensive to kind of build language models, right? It beyond that, it's skills also. I think there's a lot of news around the world that probably there are only 5,000 to 10,000 data scientists in the world who actually know how to train a foundation model, right? So what do you do then? I think you also need to appreciate that the app layer, once the accuracy of these foundation models are plateauing, the app layer is coming back into the fore, which today means agent architectures. How can you make your agent architectures reliable to solve a workflow, a clinical workflow? So data and your agent architecture, which is very custom to you, is kind of going to be your combined mode today.
Got it.
Yeah.
So let's dial it back a little bit and go towards more the business side, right? So what are the Ranjit, the question to you. So what do you think are the kind of headwinds or tailwinds that this space is going to see, right? Because so much is happening at the same time. I'm sure something is going to go wrong at some point. There's going to be some regulatory oversight that's going to come saying this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do. There are going to be shifts, and like Tushar said, you now have markets opening up on day one. It's not just one single market. So what do you see these trends looking like, and how is that going to shape the investments in the space?
No, I think, see, with AI, I mean, this is a very highly regulated space. I think it's very, very important to understand that piece, right? And also, it is not, I mean, one FDA is one, then you go SFDA. It is not just one regulation. It is across regulations across multiple countries, geographies, and so on and so forth. So I think the risk here is something will go wrong, somebody, and lives will be at stake. I mean, at the end of the day, right? And we were talking to a very famous doctor in Bangalore, and he was saying death is a very normal thing for them in the healthcare space, right? While when we sit from the outside and look at this, we might think this is wrong, that is wrong, but for them it's a very daily occurrence, right? And it will go wrong with AI, and I think I'm sure the regulators will then come back around and we'll have to solve for all of that, right? So that, I think, is the biggest challenge here. When something goes wrong, it could come back really hard, right? In terms of the regulatory frameworks that are there, which is also why the adoption has been very calibrated, right? And I think right. But like Tushar was saying, what we are also realizing is that as consumers, we are getting more and more comfortable with this, right? And so that will also drive the enterprises to kind of, when I say enterprises, hospitals, infrastructure, or the delivery systems to adopt, and the regulatory frameworks to adopt this faster, because there is a lot more acceptance of this from the consumer end of it, right? And then we are fairly very well, very excited about a few areas, and then I think in Yash's presentation we covered a few of them. But one area that I am very personally very excited about is the deployment of AI in pharma. It has been the slowest in terms of adoption, but from a data perspective, it is one of the richest pools of data that is available in the healthcare system, because whether it's preclinical, postclinical, and then when you get to market, right? I mean, there's a significant amount of data which can be used in identifying which is the drug that needs to go into clinicals, to population studies once it is back in the market, real world evidence. I think adoption there, I think AI can play a very, very significant role, and I think that's an area that personally I'm very excited. And of course, on the consumer side, like I said earlier, there are very, very clear areas, which is not getting into the clinical side of it, but in terms of patient support, adherence, support systems, and we have GLP-1 that's coming out, and I'm sure you're seeing some stuff there. Anything to do with supporting consumers in their journey to getting better. I think AI can play a very, very significant role.
Got it. And then I'll just switch over to Tushar. So see, when you're looking at all this, progress, right? You're seeing a lot of, what should you say, consumer adoption. Obviously, the expectations of consumers are also going up. They expect, your app to be able to do a lot more, perhaps. So what do you feel about user expectations and how they're going to change in this, new paradigm that we are in? Do you see at some point that they're going to expect the world and you guys are not going to be able to deliver? Or do you think the expectation for a consumer facing app versus something like a medical grade use case is kind of different? So at some point the consumer app is going to plateau, and it's more now the era of the medical grade use cases that are going to come up.
It's tough to predict right now. I want to say that as providers of AI applications, we're probably ahead of the curve than average Indian consumer.
Sure.
Like, I'm excited about releasing our RIA voice agent later this month. We're also doing some cool agentic work. Like, now you can, I don't want to give too much away, but you can pretty much ask RIA about a healthy meal plan, and then like let Swiggy deliver it to your doorstep, for example, right? Like, why is that not feasible? Hell, if you program it, why shouldn't you get your weekly groceries delivered to you when you need it on a Monday morning? Why should you have to bother about that decision? So I think some of these crafts that we can do today as entrepreneurs, as purveyors of AI and distributors of AI applications, are probably ahead of where the consumers themselves are thinking, at least in India. Obviously, the story is different in San Francisco. Consumers are also the developers, so it ends up self-feeding slightly more. But that will change. I think delightful, magical experiences will be rewarded, and those guys are going to win. And I think there's always a moat to be created around craft.
Got it.
Right? So you can craft your way, you can data domain your way to developing something that's pretty exciting. Fast forward 5 years from now, 2030 is an exciting world where like the role of human expertise and service is going to evolve pretty significantly. What do you really need a human for is going to change quite a lot. And what you use an AI for is also going to change quite a lot. And so within that entire ecosystem, as entrepreneurs, it's a fast evolving, fast moving pace, which will keep us excited. Sorry, long answer, but in short, I think the onus will be more on developers to craft wow experiences, and there'll be so many of them. So it'll get democratized. If you fast forward 5 years from now, I think consumers will probably override that. They will dictate what is needed, and there'll be an even greater democratization of developers. Fast forward 10 years from now, I think consumers will be able to develop what they want for themselves. So the role of entrepreneur is going to evolve quite a lot as well. Like, I don't think my daughter, who just turned 1 today, I was thinking about it, I don't think she'll grow up in a world where she'll not be able to develop any app she wants on demand. right? So she basically walk around with her data and craft an app that she needs when she needs it for the purpose she needs it for. So so I think the power is definitely going to shift more towards the demand side. It's just a matter of time.
Got it. So I'll end this with one last question then, right? Given that, so much is happening, what is one idea that if you are starting now, fresh as an entrepreneur, that you would want to do and one you would not want to do?
I just taking inspiration from Ranjith's piece. I think the world of how AI can meet pharma is really exciting, and what you can develop, what you can do with consumer grade medications is quite exciting. So something playing in the realm of consumer AI and pharma is probably exciting for me.
Sure.
I'm also quite excited about giving everybody in the world a personal doctor. I mean, it's just so within reach. I just don't have time for it. But if anybody here has, I'd love to invest, mentor, back doing that. It seems so just there. Yeah, those are two.
Something you would not want to do?
Something I wouldn't want to do. I wouldn't want to build another AI model. That makes no sense. It's already, as you said, asymptotically emerged to where the capability is at. That doesn't make sense. And I probably wouldn't want to launch any human intense operations business. Like, that just seems to be or any service oriented business. I think that seems to be a legacy feature. Yeah,
Nice.
That makes no sense.
Got it. Ranjith?
Yeah, I mean, I already spoke about the pharma thing, but the thing that I wouldn't want to do just now, listening to what he's been doing, is to use an AI platform, try calorie counting, trying to help consumers reduce weight. He's already doing it, so that's something I won't do.
Sure. Nilav?
That was an interesting thing. Yeah, I think probably outside of healthcare, I think healthcare and education, I think these are two areas where there's a dearth of skilled either doctors or educators to make either care better or teach better. I think education is another area where probably I would want to do something to probably have a teacher for every student to make stuff easy so that people don't dislike maths when they grow up.
Yeah.
Something you wouldn't want to touch?
Yeah, no, I don't have a great answer for that right now. Yeah.
All right.
Everything's interesting to build. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Hopefully this was helpful for the audience.